First, let's vote to significantly reduce immigration levels. You see, ever since the borders opened up, the Australian Labor Party has completely opened the floodgates to immigration, basically turning on every tap they could to dramatically increase the Australian population. And the most sinister thing about all of this is that we're smack bang in the middle of the worst housing crisis we've ever seen. Now, if you're a renter in Australia, you're practically a third-class citizen due to government and central bank policy artificially inflating house prices, surging inflation so that the entire construction industry is pretty much collapsing, and boosting the population through mass migration. Australia has the worst rental vacancy rates in the entire Western world. What an absolute betrayal to Australian renters. Renters in Australia missed out on all the ridiculous house price rises. They've suffered through surging rents. They're having to play the Hunger Games just to find a rental. And when you get kicked out and can't find another one, you might be lucky to be able to sleep in a car, but some people are being kicked out onto the bloody streets. And what does the government do? Just flood the country with record immigration levels way above our historical averages. So we're not saying to stop immigration, we're saying to significantly reduce the levels so that the current supply of new construction is better able to meet the extra demand coming into the country. And guess what this reduction would do to the housing crisis? It would significantly start to improve things almost immediately. But what we're being told is that it's all about supply, which could be 10, 20 years down the track, and it may not even be enough. And guess what? From every poll that I've seen, by far the majority of Australians would like reduced immigration levels. So here's something that the government's just going ahead and doing that most Australians don't want, that's putting upward pressure on house prices so that non-homeowners will never be able to afford a house. That's entirely screwing the rental market, all because the government says that we need more skilled workers. And many of these skilled workers coming in are already quite wealthy, so they outbid local Australians just trying to buy their first home. And what else happens? The skilled workers coming in need extra housing and extra infrastructure, and because of this extra demand, we need more skilled workers to build the housing and infrastructure for the previous skilled workers that came in. Do you see the loop? It's a farce and it has to stop. Second, we need to vote to ban foreign ownership of Australian property. Many countries don't allow foreigners to buy their own property, but Australia does. And Australia's got some of the most expensive housing in the entire world. And with the recent ridiculous house price rises, so many Australians are now locked out from ever being able to afford their own property, and yet we're happy to allow ultra wealthy foreigners to buy property and bid up the prices so they keep getting more and more expensive. With housing affordability so bad at the moment, why allow foreigners to purchase Australian property and make housing affordability even worse? Did you know that people from China buy more property in Australia than any other country in the world? Did you know that China, having such a massive population, that they have a lot of really rich people, and when you're rich and want a property for potentially money laundering, you don't care how much you pay. And quite often, foreign buyers are happy to leave their properties empty, which reduces the amount of rentals available and makes the rental crisis even worse. So we need to vote immediately to ban foreign ownership of Australian property. Next, we need to vote on overhauling over-generous housing taxation policies that create massive speculative demand for housing and benefit people who already own property, often making it easier for them to buy additional properties over someone just trying to buy their first property. Negative gearing and capital gains tax discount have turned housing into a commodity that people buy just to create wealth. When you have policies that greatly benefit property owners, it causes everyone to want to buy property, and not just one, as many as they're actually able to. So policies like these go to the demand side for property. Now, we keep hearing about the supply side, but the demand side for property has been so great for so many years because you can make so much more from property. You see, you can loan the most to buy property, which means you have extremely high leverage, but on top of that, you get a tax discount on any capital gains you make on an investment property. And if your expenses are greater than the income income you receive, you're able to claim negative gearing, which helps to reduce your personal income, meaning you pay less tax. So on top of all these benefits, the extra demand it creates ensures that property prices rise year after year, which means that property owners get both generous tax deductions along with ever-increasing house price rises. Now, Paul Keating called negative gearing a rort. The New South Wales Liberals argued that it distorts the housing market. Bill Shorten tried to completely overhaul both these policies, but lost the election on 2 occasions. And what's our current government doing? Absolutely nothing.
Nothing. Nothing.
They know that these policies are sacred cows to property owners, so they're afraid to even go near it. But guess what? Australians have had enough of policies that only seem to benefit property owners and don't do anything for non-property owners. It distorts the entire housing market, creates a speculative bubble, ends up creating a massive wealth divide, and makes it harder and harder for future generations to be able to buy their own property. So if we could improve the actual demand side for housing, we should start to see some improvement in housing affordability, which is the best thing for the future health of our society. Next, we want to vote for the Australian government and central bank to stop propping up the housing market. You see, in Australia, it seems that house prices are never allowed to fall by any sort of significant amount, because every time it looks like they will fall, the government or central bank seems to come to the rescue and prop up house prices. After the GFC, the economy was quite sluggish and house prices were starting to decline. So guess what happened? The RBA went on an extreme interest rate cutting spree. They did cut after cut, sending interest rates to ridiculously low levels, thus creating artificial demand to prop up the housing market so that house prices didn't see a significant decline, which they most likely would have. Next, we had the period after the pandemic when interest rates starting to surge, house prices fell significantly. But then what happened? The government pulls their mass immigration trick, creating ridiculous demand for a small amount of houses, thus propping up the housing market and lifting house prices once again to all-time highs. So anytime it looks like we're going to see significant house price declines, they always seem to come to the rescue, because ultra-high house prices in Australia seem to be the absolute priority for the government and the RBA. Which brings me to the last thing we need to vote on. Australian politicians should not be in charge of managing housing policies, because they own a ridiculous amount of property, making it a complete conflict of interest. When you look at how many properties our current federal politicians own, you'd be absolutely staggered. So they own a ton of properties in a country where speculative demand for housing is absolutely through the roof. So politicians know this, and they keep buying property after property after property. While millions of Australians can't even afford their own home, politicians are cashing in on some of that ridiculous demand that they've encouraged into the housing market. So if politicians are benefiting when housing affordability gets worse and worse, what makes you think they're going to really try and make things better? So there you have it, the referendums that we should be voting on in Australia right now. Millions of people are getting screwed over just so that the housing Ponzi can continue. Well, Australians have had enough. They've had enough of working ultra hard only to see someone who bought a property at ultra cheap levels make more money from that property in 1 year than the Aussie has slaving away at his job. Australians have had enough of the speculative FOMO demand for property that's been encouraged by government and central bank policies. And Australians have had enough of trying to compete just for a rental, because the government's gone on a mass immigration bender, allowing cashed up immigrants to outbid locals for rentals and also outbid locals for home purchases. I've had enough. Have you? It's now time to have a referendum on the issues that are actually destroying Australians' lives. I'm Biko Konstantinos.